Rising, Grand Rising. Hope everyone's doing well. Do me a favor, everyone in the chat. Let us know you can hear us by putting some ones in the chat, so we know you hear us.
Grand Rising, mic check, 1 2 1 2.
Peace, 2 2 1 2.
Mic check. Grand Rising, everybody.
Leave it to LJ Free. She says, "Oh no." Thank you, Miss Free. Appreciate you. So this is going to be another, how you say it, Bones? Another bomb dropper, another hard hat wearer.
Yep.
All right. I was told to turn my volume up, so give me 1 second.
Yep, make sure you show up with your hard hats. It's gonna be another doozy.
Exactly. How about now? Is that better? Hopefully y'all can hear me better now. Cool beans. So yeah, thank you, Pamela. Appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate the chef always keeping us on the straight and narrow. Man, it's Thursday Rising, and it's gonna be a good one, y'all. It's gonna be a good one. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the shout outs out the way. So I want to say Grand Rising to LJ Free, Grand Rising to Pamela Hall, Grand Rising to Macadon 1, Grand Rising to Compendio. He's also on the panel, y'all, so y'all gonna get to hear from him. Grand Rising to Enrique. Who else am I missing? Let me scroll up. Grand Rising to You Don't Want It. Nah, I don't want it. Grand Rising. Did I miss anybody? Bone. Grand Rising. El Boria. El Boria says she's on the road and listening. So we appreciate you. We appreciate all y'all for listening, tuning in. We want to say Grand Rising to the new subscribers and the individuals that just choose to listen and not participate in the chat. Without you, we couldn't do what we do. Grand Rising, Carrie Bay. So, anybody got anything, they want to share? Anything happen of any particular interest yesterday? Anyone? No?
Oh, we got an extra partner in the back to school drive.
Okay.
Taunton's Assembly has teamed up with United Way for back to school drive. Basically, we're giving them 24 fully loaded backpacks as a donation for their drive. And in return, A2 will get a spot on local news here in Tifton and a newspaper clipping and a press release.
That's what's up.
That's what it is.
That's good. I had the opportunity to speak with one of my my clients yesterday, and talking to them, of course, about genealogy and ancestry, and come to find out, she actually knows how she's tied in with the Seminole on her father's side. So she just needs some help on her mother's side. So we're going to be helping her this Sunday go over her genealogy. So send a shout out to Wilhelmina. She might be tuning in today. She also has the website, Matanchas Assembly. So we'll soon be having another subscriber. So just trying to do what we're supposed to do. Reach out to the community, doing our part. So but that's good about the partnership, Bones. Really cool.
James said that's where equity.
Pamela Hall says yes. I met a cousin on my grandfather's side, and that's the great thing about it. If nothing else, if doing your genealogy and tracking down your family members in your family tree does nothing other than help you reconnect with family members that you would not have connected with, then it would have been worth it, right? I mean, if nothing else.
Got that right. So, at the least. What?
that's my 2 cents. Um, so yeah, man. So as y'all can see in the title, as we touched on yesterday rising, we were going in on the organizations that were infiltrating the Civil Rights Act. Again, yesterday we were talking about the Greensboro 4 or the Greensboro sit-in. Come to find out, some of the organizations that spawned from that were eventually infiltrated by the FBI, and that led Doodle Vision to come in and have us do some research on Walter Mondale and Memorandum 46, which basically talks about COINTELPRO. So we're going to be going in on that some today, and I'm sure a lot of you may know what COINTELPRO is, but for those of you who don't or are not familiar with Memorandum 46 nor COINTELPRO, this is going to be pretty interesting. You're definitely going to need your hard hats. You're definitely going to need your pickaxes and your shovels and your backhoes and your front end loaders, because it's going to be very, very informational. Is that a word? Information? Informal? Y'all know what I mean.
Informative.
That's it. That's the word.
There we go.
Informative. Yep. So before we get into all that, Pamela says her cousin's going to help her dig for more information. That's what's up. So before we go into that, what I want to do is, of course, do the PSA, the public service announcement. You know what I mean? And tell people or inform people who we are, what we're about, and what we're doing. So, the Cab Grand Rising Show is brought to you by Autochthonous Assembly, where the real work gets done. And Autochthonous Assembly is the gathering of the minds that do the work. So, for those of you who are new subscribers or just listening for the first time, trying to figure out what we're about and who we are, we try to make it easy for you by always stating who we are and what our mission and our core values are. So, our mission at Autochthonous Assembly, is that we're a non-profit organization dedicated to raising up indigenous American voices by using genealogy, also known as family history, or what we call the family tree, which is the study of families and tracing of their lineage and history. Genealogists use oral interviews, historical records, and genetic analysis, and other records to obtain information about a family and to demonstrate kinship and pedigrees of its members. Now, we don't promote DNA testing for the reason that it's good for paternity tests, but it is not good for tying you to the land. And majority of those, if not all of those DNA tests, have already been deemed for entertainment purposes only. So, genealogy, doing your family tree, tying into tribes that already have roles or surname information based off of their genealogy, vital statistics, a lot of the governmental sites that have our information. Those are some of your more reliable places to get your information to find out who you are. So, our core values of Autochthonous Assembly are the foundation of our company, and it's essential to our success, and they serve as a lens through which we evaluate every business decision that we make. And those core values are, but are not limited to, integrity, which is know and do what is right; respect, treating others the way you want to be treated; responsibility, embrace opportunities to contribute; servant leadership, which is serve the common good. Pamela Hall says, turn the music down, please. All right. For you, Pamela, I'll look at that. I want to make sure we are heard. Hopefully that helps. Grand Rising Golden Moon, aka KD. So we was going over the public service announcement about who we are and what we do. And as always, our job is never to tell you who you are and who you are not. We're not here to get all in your personal business. But we're not telling you that you should join a tribe or become affiliated with any tribe. Our job and our main priority is to help you do your genealogy, number one. Number two, help you to tie into your tribe if you should choose to. You don't have to. It's a choice. And in the event that you choose to tie into your tribe or not, and you want to help your relatives, meaning those individuals that live with you, around you, those that are related to you, not necessarily tribal, but those that are related to you. If you want to help and learn how to become self-sufficient, and if you choose to help your tribe become self-sufficient, we will show you how to do that as well. So that's what we're about. That's who we are. That's what we do. That's our main focus. Everything else, we're not really concerned about it. But I do want to set the record straight about some things. Before I do that, Bones, no sell out. Is there anything that you want to talk about when it comes to A2, what we are and what we do? And even Copper.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on what you said about the idea of tying back into tribes, and while we promote the idea of genealogy, we promote genealogy as a vehicle to establish and give people a direction to find out who they are. That is not something that we mandate. That is not something that we push on people. That is by choice. Because we all have a path, we all have a history, and we all have our own freedom to explore that path to our history and tying to our history. That is not saying that everybody that listens to this show or interacts with us or follows us needs to go back and try to find tribal citizenship. That is not everybody's path. And I think it should be stressed that we are not trying to herd people into any tribes that are necessarily recognized by the federal government or necessarily the state either. The genealogy part is to, again, establish who you are and where you come from, because that is something that our people have been missing, and that is something that if we're going to get to the place that we need to be, that's going to be part of it. But that doesn't necessarily include formal membership in a tribe. So we want to make sure that that is crystal clear. That said, I think a lot of people have a connotation as well that in order to get where we need to be in terms of financial stability, quality of life, access to capital to get things done, that is not necessarily linked to tribal membership. So we want to also make sure that we dispel any myths or any rumors about people needing to go and connect with a tribe to get something. Okay. If you were part of a family and you saw people just show up to your family reunion so they could get something, so they can go get a plate or get something from you, you'd be suspicious, and rightfully so. But we have to make sure that we're not going to any of these groups, going to any of these governments looking for something. It's not about looking for something. As we've shown in past shows, and for those just tuning in and just joining us, and just starting to figure out what we're about, there are shows that we've done in the past couple of weeks that have established that the provisions to get us where we need to be socially and economically are already here. And a lot of people enjoying those benefits are not, and I repeat, are not tied to tribes. So I don't want to take too long and misdirect the flow of the show, but I want to make sure that that is clear. We're not forcing anybody to do anything. We're showing you what's out there. We're showing you the laws as they sit right now. We're showing you the groups as they exist. You can take this information and do with it what you need to. I yield the mic.
And I agree wholeheartedly with what Copper said. Piggyback. No swine.
So many of y'all may be listening to this and be like, where is all this coming from? First of all, I'm going to say grand rising to Jafrida Gordon, grand rising to Mike Easton, grand rising to LJ Coppertone, grand rising to you all. Look forward to helping you with some information and exposing you to things that you either already know, need confirmation of, or maybe debunking some stuff. Grand rising, Big Hawk. So the reason why we're having this conversation as far as who we are and what we're about is because it was brought to my attention that Bones and I were telling people that you have to tie into one of the 570 some odd nationally recognized tribes to get anything. And it was stated that if we do that, we are what they are. Well, the first thing I would like to say is if I have ever said that, somebody please produce the video or the audio that said I said that. Because we're going to quote somebody. Please have proof. Number one. Number two, I've never said that. The reason why I talked to this assembly put out videos about the nationally recognized tribes, both federal and state and local, was because there was a narrative going around that the only tribes that were recognized nationally were the 5 civilized tribes. And some refer to them as the $5 Indians. And the narrative was that there are no tribes that are melanated that are recognized. So you have to create your own tribe. So what we did, well, what Bones did, because I can't take the credit, Bones went out, did the research, and he found over 575 nationally recognized tribes, over 1,000 state recognized tribes, and then there's 2,000 more locally recognized tribes. So at the end of the day, we did that because we were correcting the narrative, because sometimes people hear things and they get to running with them and they don't do the research. Another narrative that is incorrect is that all the tribes that exist are not melanated or have no melanated representation. Well, in those videos that Bones dropped, not only was there an email contact, there's a phone number contact, and you can actually go to visit those tribes. So here's what I say to those that want to create the narrative that all tribes are $5 tribes and all tribes have no melanin representation. Unless you've talked to all 1,500 plus tribes, you don't know what you're talking about. Now, if you can produce videos of you talking to all those tribes that substantiate that, then I owe you an apology. But until then, please do your research before you make statements without any proof. And please do your research and listen to what I say carefully before you put my name out there or Bones' name out there. So with that, we want to say, great work to all those that are out there doing the research, doing the work, and helping people find out who they are. And at the end of the day, our job is to expose y'all to information because we're learning just like y'all learning. We don't claim to be scholars. We don't claim to be chiefs. We don't claim to be any of that. Our job is to help you tie into your tribe, help your families become self-sufficient. And here's one thing we can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. The stuff that we talk about is already being done, and it already has been done. And like Copper and DL says, you do not have to be part of a tribe to access HUD Section 3. You don't have to be part of a tribe to have a nonprofit organization. You don't have to be part of a tribe to get any of those resources. What we're suggesting that if you should choose to tie into one of those tribes, whether it be one of the 1,500 that are recognized, federally or statewide, or if you choose to tie into one of the tribes that are recognized locally or ones that are not recognized. You are coming to the table with something that gives you the opportunity to bring something instead of looking to take something. So hopefully this will be the last time I have to address somebody misquoting something I said. Again, we're here to help. We're here to shed some light. And with that, I will relinquish the mic on that. Set the record straight. Is there anything you want to say, Bones?
Just basically, before we make assumptions over how things work, let's do our due diligence to make sure that we know how and what's going on, and don't make assumptions when people can hear, because we have to be cautious on how many people we can lead the wrong way when we do that. That's all I'm adding on to that. That's about it. Y'all covered everything else I have to deal with it.
Oh, one quick question, because we always here to talk to this assembly like to have some verifiable proof of what we talked about. So, Copper, you've been visiting tribes, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so the tribes that you visited, have any of them had any melanated people, and have any of the leadership had melanated representation?
Yes. As a matter of fact, one thing that a lot of people have to understand, because I know a lot of people are hearing about this, and they may have heard about it over the last couple months, or maybe even the last year or two, and may not have actually had contact with any of the tribes that we're speaking of. There are tribes out there across this country that have members, that tribal members, that are legitimate card-carrying tribal members that look like us. There are some that look like our relatives. There's some that look like our grandparents and great-grandparents. And you're going to find, as you do your genealogy, a lot of us were a part of families that were almost all designated or classified as mulatto. Now, being classified as a mulatto opens a lot of things up, phenotypically and legally. And you're going to find that a lot of people that are now in these tribes would have been classified back then as mulatto, where they have features that match, the so-called African American, and some that are closer to what most people think a Native American would look like. There are some people that could honestly pass for white. And it's not that they're not part of the tribe legitimately, okay? Because we got to understand, I mean, how many so-called African-American families have parts of its family that could, at this point, in this day and age, pass for white? Okay, we got to get beyond looking at everything purely through phenotype and understand how we're all connected biologically, okay, and how we're all connected through genealogy. Because I'm going to tell you right now, that's how the tribes see it. The tribes are not looking at what you look like. They're more interested in who you're related to, when it comes to, lineage and tribal membership. So that's the first thing we got to understand. Second thing is, when you go to a powwow or to an event and the nation, whatever nation that is in question is there, you're going to see people that look like everybody. Okay, these native tribes are what America is. They are the diversity of America. And you're going to see people that are going to look very different. They're all the same family, but they're going to look very different. Yes, you have groups that have gotten in and fraudulently assumed the identity of tribes. And those people are actively pursued by legitimate tribes to be exposed. So that is there, but for the most part, when you come into contact with these people, they're honest people. That I can verify. I have pictures, I have video, I have people I've talked to verify all of this.
Oh, so you have proof?
That's correct. I have receipts.
So having proof is not a problem for you?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, I mean, all my interaction with the tribes has been, as far as just speaking to somebody, has been fairly pleasant. They're for the most part, I've dealt with mild-mannered people, very polite. general questions, general information that they give out, the events that they have, the ones that are broadcast for the public. They let people in. They're not going to give you a hard time in terms of that. You may get a hard time about other things depending on the sensitivity of the tribe. We'll talk about certain information that may happen, but my overall experience with dealing with tribes, especially in the southeastern Virginia and northeastern North Carolina area, have been pretty positive.
Okay, well, I definitely appreciate that, and I'm not saying that there hasn't been any situations where people have had negative reactions from tribal members. That's not what I'm saying. What I am trying to say,
right,
or try to share with everyone here and everyone that's listening, is that it is very dangerous to paint people with a broad brush. That's no different than someone trying to say that everybody that's a part of the autochthonous movement is trying to be a sovereign citizen. We know that's not true. So before we start painting people with broad brushes, how about we bring proof? How about we bring clarity? We bring understanding instead of just making these assumptions. And for those people that are looking to find information, because they're dependent on you and they're listening to you because you have a title, let's be responsible. Let's do the responsible thing and show and prove your work. If you say something, be able to back it up. That's all I'm saying.
Or if you even have a question about what it is we do in our end game, our phone number is public, our website is public, our email address public. You can send us a question at any given time if you want to know what our end game is, what programs we're doing. If you don't want to come out in public, reach out to us. We don't have to make assumptions.
So yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say about that. Again, we will address anything that could negatively affect and hurt our people. So the goal is not to hurt anyone or to cast doubt on anything that anybody is looking to do. But if what you're doing can hurt somebody, then we're gonna send proof and request that you debunk it or show us what we're missing. Mike Easton says, "Hey y'all, we should have a go-go powwow out here in DC." Mike, I'm in Woodbridge, so I'm like 20 minutes south of you. Yeah, we might have to seeing about how to do that. That might be doable because we got some VA folks up here that like go-go music. Yeah. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked. So y'all ready? Y'all ready to do this Memorandum 46? Got your hard hats on?
Get it.
Alright. So I'm gonna put the link to the Memorandum 46 in the chat so that you can keep up. Remember, we put these links in the chat for you, ladies and gentlemen, to one, have it for your personal information. Two, so you can go back and do the research and look at the sources to help confirm what we're saying, or if there's some information you have that debunks it, please share it with us. Because like we say, we're not the experts. We're just sharing information that we find in order that we all may grow and have a better understanding of what's going on. So with that said, no sellout. You ready to read the National Security Council Interdepartment Group for Africa? And it's basically the study response to Presidential Security Review Memorandum NSC 46, Black Africa and the U.S. Black Movement.
Come on, we reading? Ain't no pictures in this book? Man, I'm out of here.
Don't do that. Grand Rising Oak Cliff, excuse me. Mr. Program Director. Don't sell out. Alright, I'll go ahead and read. Objective of our policy toward Black Africa is to prevent social upheavals which could radically change the political situation throughout the area. The success or failure of our policy in the region depends on the solution international and internal issues whose importance of the United States is on the increase. That's how it starts out. 2.A. U.S. interest in Black Africa. A multiplicity of interests influences the U.S. attitude toward Black Africa. The most important of these interests can be summarized as follows. Political. If Black African states assume attitudes hostile to the U.S. national interest, our policy toward the white regimes, which is a key element in our relations with the Black states, may be subjected by the latter to great pressure for fundamental change. Thus, the West may face a real danger of being deprived of access to the enormous raw material resources of Southern Africa, which are vital for our defense needs, as well as losing control over the Cape Sea routes, by which approximately 65% of Middle Eastern oil is supplied to the Western Europe. Do y'all see what is happening with this memorandum, what they're trying to suggest?
No ifs and buts about that.
Because they're making the inference towards Black Africa. And the reason why they're doing this, because you got to remember, this is during the late 50s, early 60s. No, this is actually talking about late 60s. What will we classify ourselves as then? Black. And there was a movement towards Africanism, right?
And notice what they say, Black Africa. So you got a white Africa?
Exactly. Black Africa as opposed to white Africa. So it goes on to read, moreover, such a development may bring about internal political difficulties by intensifying the activity of the Black movement in the United States itself. So they're inferring that the Black African states, or the states of Africa that are heavily melanated, because they don't consider all of Africa Black. Just so you know. They're saying that by the Black movement in the United States being nationalized, it could cause political difficulties. So what this memorandum is doing, it is setting up a defense to take action. Sort of like the BIE list. When we make negative statements about different cultures and different races, and you get placed on the BIE list, they do the same thing. It's the same story, different time frame. It also goes on to read, it should also be borne in mind that Black Africa is an integral part of a continent where tribal and regional discord, economic backwardness, inadequate infrastructures, drought and famine are constant features of the scene. And here's another thing that we got to pay attention to, the way that they worded it. It said it says that Black Africa is an integral part of the continent where tribal and regional discord, economic backwardness, inadequate infrastructure, drought and famine are constant features of the scene. In conjunction with the artificial borders imposed by the former colonial powers, guerrilla warfare in Rhodesia, and widespread indignation against apartheid in South Africa, the above factors provide the communist states with ample opportunities for furthering their aims. This must necessarily redound to the detriment of the U.S. political interests. So they're saying that the black interest movement could cause an uprise in the black states of Africa and could jeopardize the political partnerships that we have there, and also cause communism to gain a foothold in the U.S. LJ Free says, who came out of Southwest Africa and are now key players over here in America?
Hugo.
That's exactly right, Lady Freed. I mean, when you think about what's being mentioned here, I mean, anytime the government establishes a doctrine about something or establishes its policy or stance on something, it has to frame it in terms of what national security interests are. Okay, U.S. political interests. This is what goes into national security, or at least what the motive is for national security. So if you're found being afoul of it, then you're going to get a response from the federal government. Okay, so that we have to understand, and this is definitely, like I said, TMH, this is definitely tying, quote unquote, Black Africa to people that are identified as Black in the Americas. Okay, because if they link the two, now there's a case to be made that making sure that certain people stay in line or go along with the interests of national security. So we have to make sure we understand that. I'm sorry?
You see how they framed it, though? They framed it as, if the so-called Blacks in America get the uproar in their speaking, it's going to affect the so-called Blacks in Black Africa, and they're going to lose control of what they want to be controlling, resources.
Exactly. And so let's look at that too, just really quick. When you look at our fate being tied together, at least in the eyes of the government, because we didn't tie our fate to theirs. How many people, before this period, even knew about these tribes in Africa, these cultures that are in Africa? This was something that the U.S. government established, and so when you have the civil rights movement, when you have members of this movement and these groups that are starting to come up, now you see why the government uses the language it does as well about these people being backward, innovation, inadequate infrastructures, backwardness. And this wasn't just then. Look at how this is being used now. Look at these stories about people in the federal government talking stuff about what's going on over there in Africa and how people need to go back there and fix their own countries. None of this has changed. This is still being used.
What stood out to me though as well, Copper and TMH, is the part of when they talking about the Africa, why is it split?
Mm-hmm.
Why are they putting Black? If they tell you that we come from Africa, so why are you saying Black Africa? And also, didn't they tell you that them borders were man-made by colonialism? They colonized Africa and set up false borders. What is Africa again? A European colonial construct?
Right.
Especially when the people on the landmass don't even call it Africa. I'm just saying.
Well, the thing that I found interesting, the same verbiage is used to construct the Black Identity extremist list, and how they tie in anybody that deal with UCC codes or speak on sovereignty as being necessary to be on a Black Identity extremist list, even if the individual has no intentions on being an extremist to the point of causing harm to the United States government. Just their affiliation will put them on that list because they're dealing with UCC codes.
And that's from the mouth of the government itself.
Exactly. It's the same. It's like they're using a template.
Exactly. And you're seeing it play out in the media too. Look at Black Panther, for those who have seen it. Look at the conversation between Eric Killmonger, the American, and what the plot was to do with Wakanda, to weaponize parts of the world against colonialism in the West. Think about that. Think about how that plays into this. This is what the government is setting up as its adversary. Those here and in other places, connecting, working together, okay, in the name of Africa or any of these affected regions, Black Africa, namely, using that and weaponizing people around the world in the name of Black Africa.
I mean, you see what they did. Look at what they did with Rwanda. The same thing that happened here. Went over there and separated them people by so-called facial features, the size of your nose or the pointiness of your nose.
Phenotype.
Weaponize the population against the population.
So what they do, they put the economic, how it could affect the United States economically. And now they're going to go on and to address, after the economic, they're going to go on and address the facts or the information that they have to request or suggest that something be done before it gets more out of hand. So let's look at the way they break it down economically. Black Africa is increasingly becoming an outlet for U.S. exports and investments, financial. The mineral resources of the area continue to be of great value for the normal functioning of industry in the United States. So they're saying normal functioning. So what they're inferring is that any attempts of the black movement to assuage or convince Black Africa to be on board with them will interfere with the normal functioning of the industry of the United States and the allied countries. They even bring the allied countries into this. In 1977, U.S. direct investment in Black Africa totaled about $1.8 billion and exports $2.2 billion. New prospect of substantial profits would continue to develop in the countries concerned. Okay, so they're tying in that should this black movement get out of hand or get out of control, they can lose not only their $1.2 billion investment, but also their $2.2 billion in profits from exports. LJ Free says, or was Killmonger asking for advanced tech from the supposed homeland in order to help his people, and for that he was seen as the villain? Just a thought. That's a good point. So back to the economic explanation of why they should interfere with the black movement. Now they're going to paint the picture of how Black Africa and the U.S. black movement are tied. So it goes on to read, apart from the above mentioned factors adverse to U.S. strategic interests, the nationalist liberation movement in Black Africa can act as a catalyst with far-reaching effects on the American black community by stimulating its organizational consolidation and by inducing radical actions. Such a result would be likely as Zaire went the way of Angola and Mozambique. Did y'all see that? Did y'all hear that?
Mm-hmm.
They gave you what the result could be. I give you an instance of Zaire going the way of Angola and Mozambique. And they say that
Afraid of unity. They was afraid of unity sparking.
well, not only unity, because the way that they're painting the picture is that they're saying that they could cause far-reaching effects on the black community and stimulating radical actions.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, they'll let they'll let the people read this determine what the radical part is, but radical doesn't mean anything positive or good. And it's the same thing that they did with the BIE list. And people think it's a game, so they go on YouTube saying stuff and thinking they're not going to be affected by it. But okay, all I say is be careful what you're saying, who you associate with yourself with. So then it goes on to read, an occurrence of the events of 1967 through 68 would do grievous harm to U.S. prestige, especially in view of the concern of the present administration with human rights issues. So it's leaning on the current administration that they cannot afford to have this happen because of the existing human rights issues in 67 through 68. Moreover, the administration would have to take specific steps to stabilize the situation. Such steps might be understood both inside and outside of the United States. So they're going to make a two-pronged attempt, right? They're not just going to do this outside the United States. They're going to do this inside the United States, which makes me go back to those that are claiming that they want to be sovereign or be totally separate from the government. If they can touch you outside the United States, what makes you think they can't touch you inside the United States? And this was in 1967 and 68 when they was talking about this. If you dare to answer that question or show some proof that you can't be touched, I would love to see it. Moving on.
Yeah, exactly. And if I could add something real quick.
Go ahead, you got it.
This document, something in this kind of sparked my interest. And it says in here, such a result would be likely as Zaire went the way of Angola and Mozambique. What is Zaire? Okay, we don't see Zaire on the map anymore. Why? Because it is not called the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Yeah.
Okay? So when we look at the history of what Congo is, what the Democratic Republic is, on the Wikipedia page, and I'll post this link to Zaire in the chat for everybody to see and follow along. I'm not going to take it too far off, but I wanted to show an example of what we're talking about. It says the country was a one-party totalitarian dictatorship run by Mobutu Sese Seko, popular movement of the Revolution Party. Think revolution. Think the language that they're talking about now with black nationalism. Zaire was established following Mobutu's seizure of power in a military coup in 1965. Following 5 years of political upheaval, following independence known as the Congo Crisis. Zaire had a strongly centralist constitution and foreign assets were nationalized. Okay. The period is sometimes referred to as the Second Congolese Republic. Now, I say that to say, and I read this part of it to say, pay attention to the fact that they had a centralist constitution and that assets were nationalized. So look at what the United States is trying to hedge against. Socialism. Okay. And when I say socialism, I don't mean state-imposed socialism, not the United States imposing socialism on people, but people banding together and imposing socialism on the United States to nationalize or centralize American assets. People here in the U.S. centralizing U.S. government for themselves. Pay attention to what they're setting up, the straw man that they're setting up to knock down in whoever sides with this. I yield the mic.
And plus add on in the 1960s, what was happening? You had so-called black political leaders going over there to Africa. So put this in play. You got African nations coming together under their own government. Wouldn't that mean the possibility of the American Negro having international allies now?
Yep.
Wouldn't that be the main importance to make sure we have no international allies? Because once you have international allies in international countries, you can be recognized as a nation, right?
Facts. That's how the United States got recognized as a nation by France.
So to make sure that we never get recognized again, any nation that can possibly be your ally, you can see they're already putting in writing why they have to break it down.
Right.
I mean, that's just what I'm getting from it so far.
I mean, you're absolutely spot on. And then the guys that they're using is because that these organizations, some, not all, had a propensity to appear. It's just an appearance because they were defending themselves, but they had the propensity to appear radical. And this was done because, and I hate to say it like this, it was done because people that look like them were infiltrating them and then turning back and giving the government the information, and then causing discord and making them become radical. That's the reason why you need to know who you're dealing with. Because just because they look like you, don't mean they for you. And they'll go on and to talk about how they do that. And one of the ways they do that, because it's something that must be said, one of the ways that they cause discord is that they started spreading rumors and creating jealousy and having people pitted against each other. Bones, do you know how that's done today?
Oh, so many ways. Give one community something that the other one don't have.
Or go ahead. I'm sorry.
A little bit more money than what the next one had. Yeah, they got so many mechanisms they use it to activate it.
But you know what the base one is that most people ignore because they're scared to open their mouth? Let's just say me, you, Copper, and No Sellout are really close, right? And then we form an organization, right? And then we start bringing members in. Now, me, you, Copper, and No Sellout have always been close. And then someone comes in, they saying all the right things, and then they start forming dissension between me and you, Bones. They start telling you stuff about me, and because you never verify it, you start to believe it. They start telling me stuff about you, and because I never verified, I believe it. Now, me and your relationship has become toxic because neither one of us got in a room with this person that spread this information and called them out on it.
Bingo.
It starts to fester. Sounds familiar? Isn't that what they do in the back chats nowadays? I'll wait. Because that's all it takes to cause dissension and discord, for someone not to say anything when someone's calling somebody out, and they let it grow and they let it fester. Because at the end of the day, whatever I say to you to your face, and then I say it to somebody else, and they come to you and they go, Bones, Thomas says you crazy. You know, yeah, he said it about me all the time. But if you start hearing that I said stuff about you that you've never heard me say, and you never call me out on it or talk to me about it in front of the person that said it, and you start to believe it, now it becomes easier and easier for you to start to believe anything that person tells you because you've given them credibility they have not earned. That's how all that starts. So I say that to say this for people in the chat. Be careful of individuals that compliment you and act like they're your friend. And then every time you talk to them one-on-one, they're always talking about somebody. But they never say those things to that person's face. Be careful. Moving on. It says, apart from the above-mentioned factors adverse to U.S. strategic interests and national liberation movement in Black Africa can act as a catalyst. So we already read that. It says, I talked about the occurrence, about them mobilizing and handling things both inside and outside the United States. It says, in order to prevent such a trend and protest U.S. national security interests, it would appear essential to elaborate and carry out effective countermeasures. I'm going to say it again. In order to prevent such a trend and protect U.S. national security interests, it would appear essential to elaborate and carry out effective countermeasures. So they've painted the picture of something that could possibly happen. Now, they're going to have countermeasures. Well, you normally have countermeasures when somebody do something, right? These are preemptive strikes. These are things that you're going to do to prevent something that could possibly happen from happening. So it says, number one, possibly of joint action by U.S. Black and African National Movement. It says possibility of joint action by U.S. Black and African National Movement. Okay? And elaborating U.S. policy toward Black Africa, due weight must be given to the fact that there are 25 million American blacks whose roots are African and who consciously or subconsciously sympathize with African nationalism. Now we know that 25 million American blacks having roots in Africa, that ain't true, but that's another story. The living conditions of black population should also be taken into account. Immense advances in the field are accompanied by a long-lasting high rate of unemployment, especially among the youth, and by poverty and dissatisfaction with government social welfare standards. These factors taken together may provide a basis for joint actions of a concrete nature by the African national movement and the U.S. black community. Now, here's the way this is funny the way they did it. It says, these factors taken together may, right? So that means there's a possibility. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. But this is how the wording is important in the way they do things. It says it may provide a basis for a joint actions of a concrete nature. What does it mean when something is concrete? It infers it turns that maybe into a strong fact or a possibility. And it goes on to read, basically, actions would take the form of demonstrations and public protests, but the likelihood of violence cannot be excluded. They're saying there could be violence involved, so you can't exclude it. There would also be attempts to coordinate their political activity both locally and in international organizations. Inside the United States, these actions could conclude protest demonstrations against our policy towards South Africa, accompanied by demand for boycotting corporations and banks which maintain links with the country, attempts to establish a permanent black lobby in Congress, including activists, leftists, radical groups, and black legislatures, the reemergence of Pan-African ideas, resumption of protest marches recalling the days of Martin Luther King, renewal of the extremist ideal of establishing an African republic and on American soil. Finally, leftist radical elements of the black community could resume extremist actions in the style of the defunct Black Panther Party. Now, here's the thing that I find totally interesting. Was it the government that instituted the Pan-African movement? Wasn't it the NAACP who was headed by two Caucasians and had a token on the board? Weren't they the ones that talked about the boycotts and had those young people in Alabama go to integrated schools or integrate into schools that were white without offering any help?
Yep.
Okay, just checking.
That's right.
Okay, just checking. But there, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Like violence, don't it?
Mm-hmm. So these organizations or these entities infiltrated our groups, and then now when individuals are saying, hey, we want a right to defend ourselves, yada yada yada, for whatever purpose, whatever you believe, now they're trying to make these groups appear radical. If we would have stayed minding our business, that would have never happened. If we would have checked people trying to cause dissension and spread rumors, would have never happened. But because people are so scared to open their mouth because they want to lose, they don't want to lose what little bit of friends they got, they just accept any old stupid thing that somebody says about somebody else and don't check it because they're not man enough nor woman enough to stand up, which basically means they will lie down and fall down. So keep being scared of people that you ain't never met. Moving on. A menace to U.S. economic interests, though not a critical one, could be posed by a boycott by black African states, again, American companies which maintain contact with South Africa and Rhodesia. If the idea of economic assistance to black Americans shared by some African regimes, I get it. It says, if the idea of economic assistance to black Americans shared by some African regimes could be realized by their placing orders in the United States, mainly with companies owned by blacks, they could gain a limited influence on the U.S. black community. They are making all these inferences in something that has not happened, but they want to put something in place to prevent it from happening. I'm telling y'all that BIE list, same template.
Exactly. This establishes that it's okay for them to keep and resume commerce with this part of the world, but you so-called Negro, so-called black man, cannot do business with these people outside of the country. You can't do business with these foreigners. Only the state can, and other groups that they deem that are worthy to do so can. Look at how this is locking down your economic development. How it's locking down trade.
I was causing false separation.
Right.
You can't do business with them, but how many people know that you can't because it's a policy? Individual look at it, well, you don't want to deal with me, I don't want to deal with you either.
Right. And so now the people through this policy believe that the decision to not do business with them is social. And so with that, everybody sees it as a social thing. And so essentially the people police themselves because they don't bother doing business with each other. So the government has no reason to step in.
LJ Free says, so we couldn't be international players. They really stacked the cards against us from the gate. Well, at the same time, we have to look at what they're trying to do. We allowed individuals to infiltrate our organizations and run those organizations. And then when we decided that they were running them wrong and we needed to protect ourselves because we got tired of getting hit upside the head with billy clubs and having dogs sicked on us, now they declared us as radical. So they instigated it, and then we had to correct it, and now we're being punished for it. All because of infiltration. That's the part that we cannot ignore. Infiltration. People that look like us, that mean us no good and cause dissension. I'm gonna keep saying it until you get tired of it, until you understand.
And didn't we have people at this time, I'm gonna say it again, political melanated leaders traveling the world speaking? They wanted to make sure they got no help, no assistance, no recognition.
And it had more to do with the fact that they were willing to speak with some of these quote-unquote radical groups, because the only ones that they are targeting based on this memorandum are the ones that are affiliated with the black movement or the black radical movement. Because you only affiliate with the black movement if you're talking with or speaking with or engaging in multiple conversations with these black activists. And like it has been proven time and time again, it would have never gotten to that point or even gotten that radical had we done our due diligence and checked who was at the door, instead of just letting everybody in and then causing dissension. I can't repeat that enough. It's happening to this day. And people just let it all in. Oh, I get along with everybody. Can't we all just be friends? No, we can't, because everybody can't be trusted. Trust is something that's earned, not given.
Right. It's like what I was saying the other day. If we operate like we got no friends, because when you look around, there's a little bit of truth to that. But when you operate like you have no friends, then you, in a way, force everybody to earn your trust. And that's something that we have failed to do over the generations. Also, if I could, look at what this is doing, what you're seeing here in this statement is doing over these generations to our people. So you go from having groups of people, during that generation, before that generation, not knowing very much at all about Africa, not affiliating with Africa, not seeing themselves as African, okay, because of their lineage, of their families, right? Even though their culture wasn't what their culture was a couple hundred years ago, they knew who they were back then. But look at how over time, when they're seeing all the leaders that are getting the spotlight, that are getting TV coverage, all of them talking about some other place thousands of miles away in Africa, and how we need to connect with them. Think about it. Think about how all of this, through the infiltration, like I said, think of how all of this is being played into shaping the mind of the Negro here in America and influencing it and steering it towards what we eventually get in the late 80s with the African American.
Ain't nothing I can say to refute that.
And you step back, you can actually see implementation of it. You can see it. You can see them applying it. You can see the policies that they put 20 years ahead in most cases to set it up. Then you wonder why they keep them emotional triggers on us. Because they already got the mechanism to catch you once you get emotional.
Yep.
Exactly.
So the case is being built in this memorandum of what could possibly happen, the negative effects that would occur in the event that something should happen. So they're building up all these scenarios of what could potentially happen should this connection be made. And then it goes on and says political options, right? In the context of long-term strategy, the United States cannot afford a radical change in the fundamentals of its African policy, which is designed for maximum protection of national security. Whenever it becomes a situation of national security, they got you. In the present case, emphasis is laid on the importance of Black Africa for U.S. political, economic, and military interests. That's what they just did. They tied all of those interests up into one, and they're blaming the Black national movement potentially partnering with the African liberation movement as a reason or a means to where it could affect the United States government politically, economically, and militarily. And anytime there's something that's considered to be a situation of national security, boy, you in trouble. So then it goes on to give you recommendations. Here are some of the recommendations. In weighing the range of U.S. interests in Black Africa, basic recommendations arranged without intent to imply priority are, meaning that just because this is number one, it's not the number one priority. These are just ideas that they're throwing up and seeing what's going to stick. Specific steps should be taken with the help of appropriate government agencies to inhibit coordinating activity of Black movement in the United States. Special clandestine operations should be launched by the CIA to generate mistrust and hostility in American and world opinion against joint activity of the two forces, and to cause division among Black African and radical national groups and their leaders. I'm going to say that again. Special clandestine operations should be launched by the CIA to generate mistrust and hostility in American and world opinion against joint activity of the two forces, and to cause division among Black African radical national groups and their leaders. Use embassies to Black African countries, especially interested in Southern Africa, must be highly circumspect in view of the activity of certain political circles and influential individuals opposing the objectives and methods of U.S. policy towards South Africa. It must be kept in mind that the failure of U.S. strategy in South Africa would adversely affect American standing throughout the world. In addition, this would mean a significant diminution of U.S. influence in Africa and the emergence of new difficulties in our internal situation due to worsening economic prospects. Number 4, the FBI should mount surveillance operations against Black African representatives and collect sensitive information on those, especially at the UN, who oppose U.S. policy towards South Africa. The information should include facts on their links with the leaders of the Black movement in the United States, thus making possible at least partial neutralization of the adverse effects of their activity. Trends in the American Black movement. Then we can talk about this a little further. In connection with our African policy, it is highly important to evaluate correctly the present state of the Black movement in the United States and basing ourselves on all available information to try to devise a course for its future development. Such an approach is strongly suggested by our perception of the fact that American Blacks form a single ethnic group potentially capable of causing extreme instability in our strategy towards South Africa. thus may lead to critical differences between the United States and Black Africa in particular. Excuse me. It would also encourage the Soviet Union to step up its interference in the region. Finally, it would pose a serious threat to the delicate structure of race relations with the United States. All the above considerations give rise to concern for the future security of the United States. So what do you think?
If this ain't showing you how they do it,
Does it not sound like some of the stuff they're going in the back chats today?
mm-hmm.
And it's easier to do on the internet. It's easier to cause mistrust and dissension on the internet. Because we're not face to face, we're not eye to eye, we're not speaking to each other, we're not looking at body placement and posture when questions are asked, or looking at facial gestures when a person asks a question to determine whether they lie or if they have any tails.
That's right. There's an innate anonymity in the internet. The ability to create multiple accounts. All you need is an email address and maybe a phone number, and you can spin those up in a couple minutes and come in as a completely new individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
And pretend to be a completely different individual when if you got to be in front of somebody, you got to put a disguise on. Well, you have an innate disguise in the internet. So it becomes even easier to do all of this stuff. And also notice what's old is new again. Look at these groups. Soviet Union comes up. Black nationalist groups come up in the news media. It's the same boogeyman. This never stops because they know this works.
Cause mistrust. People falling for the same banana in the tailpipe, but just because they look like you and they sound good and they have a large YouTube following, you believe whatever they tell you and don't question anything. That's dangerous.
That's right. That's right. How many people, for the sake of argument, cite how many followers they have on social media, YouTube, whatever have you, as validation and legitimacy? What makes a person with 2 million subscribers more legitimate than somebody with 200? Popularity. That's it.
And if that's not the first form of indoctrination in high school, I don't know what is. How many friends you got? Ain't nobody your friend. Ain't that part of bullying? Don't nobody in school like you.
Mm-hmm.
But yet we ask for likes on YouTube. Ain't nobody your friend. Now friends have become subscribers. Come on, y'all. Stop falling for the banana in the tailpipe. Start calling these.
That's right.
Start making these people prove what they say. Stop letting them get you in separate back chats and spreading rumors about people without talking to that person to their face. Stop doing that. Stop falling for the fact that somebody says, well, I'm cool with everybody and I get along with everybody. But yet, when it's you and them talking, they ain't got nothing positive to say about anybody. The same. Because if they talk about them, if they talking about them to you, they're talking about you to somebody else. I'm sorry, go ahead. Go.
No, I was just gonna say, LJ Free says that's one of the reasons it's good to know who you're dealing with. Who's your grandma? Some people are descendants of the very ones who betrayed our ancestors. It's like we were saying a couple weeks ago. Our people are on both sides of this. Our people are not only the ones that are being implicated in memoranda like this, but they're also the ones helping to carry out the fraud and the deceit. So we have to be mindful of that. Again, you have to operate as if you have no friends. At everyone.
Question everything and everyone, regardless of how many YouTube followers they have. Period, point blank in discussion. If you're scared to do that, you might find yourself on a BIE list. Don't take my word for it. Do your research. So then it goes on to read, since the mid-1960s, when legislation on the human rights was passed and the Martin Luther King murder, federal and local measures to improve black welfare have been taken, as a result of which the U.S. black movement has undergone considerable changes. The principal changes are as follows. Social and economic issues have supplanted political aims as the main preoccupations of the movement, and actions formerly planned on a nationwide scale are now being organized locally. Fragmentation and lack of organizational unity within the movement. Sharp social stratification of the black population and lack of policy options which could reunite them. Want of a national leader of standing comparable to Martin Luther King.
See that? Abandon all hope for this Messiah figure that's going to come and be a national leader and lead you to whatever promised land has been promised. Abandon all hope here, because they're telling you right now, this is what we're looking out for.
I heard somebody say that they should be looked at as a Dr. Martin Luther King or Malcolm X figure.
See, got us playing right into it.
But I'm the
self-appointed leader.
Hey man, but I'm the agent.
And what did Miss Ella Baker say? What was she telling the youth, the young minds at the time? Don't sit back and wait for no one person to speak for you. Who can articulate the needs of the people better than the people? And like we stated before, one of the biggest problems, in my opinion, that I keep recognizing in this is that we're always so quick to let somebody else handle our affairs. And it seems like every time we do that, we get further and further and further in this hole. We have to start being the voices of change. We have to start using our voices in our communities, in our neighborhoods to affect change. And if we don't start today, we're just setting our children up to go through the same cycle over and over and over. It's that choice. We at that point in time again where that choice has to be made. And the time is now. We know what it is. We just must do.
And that's the thing. There are, we all don't always agree on everything. Even in the Township Assembly, we all don't agree on everything. And we're not crazy enough to think that we will ever agree on 100% on everything. But what we do is we present information and facts based off of the things that we differ on to come to a final conclusion that's going to work best for the whole. If somebody does something or says something or puts out some information, just because I don't agree with it, I don't sit there and go, well, it's not going to work, and they don't give you reasons why it won't work, or call you a name or call you stupid because I don't agree with it. I'm going to present facts, I'm going to present information, and I'm going to present proof of why it may not work in this situation. And if there's enough proof to show otherwise, then we roll with it. But that's not what our community does nowadays. Many people in our community will make assertions and assumptions without any proof and just make statements and have you lean on the fact that they give themselves a title and you're supposed to believe it. Quite honestly, I ain't never met you, so why would I believe anything you have to say? There's nobody in your community that's going to vouch for you, so why would I believe anything you have to say? I don't even know what you look like, so why would I believe anything that you have to say? I don't even know your name, so why would I believe anything you have to say? And then you don't show any proof, so why would I believe anything you have to say? Am I wrong? Am I missing something?
No, in there.
In the words of Destiny's Child, no, 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 no.
Just wondering. So then it talks about the range of policy options. The concern for the future security of the United States makes necessary the range of policy options. Arranged within the intent, implied priority they are. A. To enlarge programs with the framework of the present budget for the improvement of the social and economic welfare of American blacks in order to assure continuing development of present trends in the black movement. More handouts. To elaborate and bring into effect a special program designated to perpetuate division in the black movement and neutralize the most active groups of leftist radical organizations representing different social strata of the black community, to encourage division in the black circles, create division amongst people, start spreading rumors, and those people that hear those rumors will not validate those rumors and then become suspicious of the rumors that are being spread, even though they've known those people probably longer or just as long as the individual spreading those rumors. C. To preserve the present climate which inhibits the emergence from within the black leadership of a person capable of exerting nationwide appeal. You call out their character flaws. You call out things about them that aren't good. You show attention about who they are as a person, but you don't disprove what's being done. D. To work out and rationalize preventative operations in order to impede durable ties between U.S. black organizations and radical groups in African states. You institute B. Of distilling untrust into D. Same tactics. Number E. To support actions designed to sharpen social stratification in black community, which would lead to the widening and perpetuation of the gap between successful educated blacks and the poor, giving rise to growing agnosticism between different black groups and a weakening of the movement as a whole. You help the black educated become more affluential, and you put a stranglehold on the poor class to create a bigger gap, so there seems to be no connection. F. To facilitate the greatest possible expansion of black business by granting government contracts and loans with favorable terms to black businessmen. Do I need to expound on that?
Say that one more time, please, for those who didn't catch it.
To facilitate the greatest possible expansion of black business by granting government contracts and loans with favorable terms to black businessmen. G. To take every possible means through the AFL-CIO leaders to counteract the increasing influence of black labor organizations which function in all major unions, and in particular the National Coalition of Black Trade Union and its leadership, including the creation of real preference for advanced and hostile reaction among white trade unions to demands for improvement of social and economic welfare of the blacks.
It's like they creating problems so they can run in like they got the solution.
Yep.
Woo, got to be more careful.
The superhero jealous of the other superhero.
H. To support nomination at federal and local levels of loyal black public figures to elective offices, to government agencies, and the court. This would promote the achievement of a twofold purpose. First, it would be easier to control the activity of loyal black representatives within existing institutions. Second, the idea of an independent black political party now under discussion with black leadership circles would soon lose all support. And that is the Memorandum 46. I don't know what to tell you. Infiltration. Stop trusting everybody because they have a huge following or they sound good or they can articulate and they have no proof. And just because somebody looks like you as an Indian, that don't mean you should trust them either. Yeah, I said it. Grand Rising, David Corey. So what have we learned today? I'm gonna tell you what I learned. If you can't prove who you are or what you do, you are a myth to me. Trust is to be earned, not given. Just because you take me aside and tell me something about somebody, don't make it true. Because if you take me to the side and tell me something about somebody, you better be prepared to talk to them in front of me about the same thing. That's the stance I stand on. And if you don't stand on that stance, then I got a problem with you. That don't mean I don't like you. That just means I got a problem with you. That means I'm not going to trust you. That means we can't do business. That don't mean I wish you ill will. That just means now I'm not going to let your inability to be on code or to be stand up affect the people that I care about. Because you too scared to open your mouth. Or stop the BS because you don't want to lose friends. Or because you want to sit on somebody's panel and get your friends up. That's what I learned today. Anybody in the panel got something to say they want to add to this before we talk about the COINTELPRO through Wikipedia?
Vet everything. Question everything.
Question everybody.
If the importance of that hasn't shown to this point, then I guess it's not for you. But in all honesty, if we really say we're doing this for 7 generations, that means more than ever, we got to make sure we are on code. We got to make sure that we don't allow what we do today to get supplanted by somebody else's narrative. And the way we do that is we change our habits for the better. We must change how we conduct ourselves with the world and ourselves. And it starts at home. That's it. That's the main thing I got from the day. It's so important. It's key.
Don't trust people because they got a title. I don't care what their title is. Doctor, lawyer, king, prince, chief, squaw, CEO, CFO, CIO, accountant, barber.
Element appeal.
Element appeal. You stupid. And what I'm saying is, make people earn your trust. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying don't walk around trusting anybody, but don't just give somebody your trust just because they are a YouTube figure or because they got a lot of quote unquote friends. Make them earn your trust.
That's right. And if they walk around making claims, make them substantiate them. Prove it.
Isn't that what was the original purpose of the conscious community? Show and prove? Or am I misunderstanding it?
The idea was a proof of concept. I mean, think about it. Everybody that can hear this program, think about how you got here. Think about the things people have told you on the way here. Whether you came here from Pan-Africanism, whether you came here from esoteric studies, regardless of how you made it here, think about what was told to you that brought you here. Think about that. Think about the claims people made and how much of that they've been able to back up with proof. Like I told everybody earlier in the show, the interactions I've had with not only indigenous tribes here, but with peoples in other parts of the world, I have proof, I have documentation of those interactions. How many people talking about these other groups can say that? How many of them, honestly? How many of them are just going off of what they read somebody else write or heard from somebody else's lecture? We got to start paying attention to this. We have to start holding people to what they say.
That's what's up. That's real talk. I'm sure there'll be some clapback, some tap dancing, some name calling. That's a COINTELPRO tactic. trying to discredit the person without disproving the information. So we're gonna let you know what's gonna happen already. There's gonna be some tap dancing, some name calling, but ain't nobody gonna disprove what was said. Pay attention. You've been given a formula.
And to repeat something that David Corey said in the chat that was real powerful. The must to start on yourself is very important. Because no matter what you want to think or feel, we all suffer for some form of indoctrination on our minds.
Mm-hmm.
We came up in this. That's why it's so important to make sure we don't pass none of these bad habits or ways down to the next generations. So it's very important for us to put that work in. And yes, it's going to be good times and bad times. Yes, it's going to be ups and downs. But if we remember what we're doing this for, we're going to get there.
And here's one thing I want to say, and then we're going to go into the COINTELPRO through Wikipedia. And I think I can speak for all on the Conscious Assembly when I say this. If you ever hear anyone say anything about what I said or what I did, please come ask me. Especially if you never heard me say it. And be willing to ask them. Be brave enough to ask them. Are you willing to say that in front of them? Because if someone told you I said something or I did something, they should be brave enough to say it in front of me and tell you again. If they're not, then the question should be, why not? I mean, that stance you should take with anybody. I'm saying anything about anybody, but I'm going on record to say if anybody has ever said I said something or tells you that I said something or I did something that was contrary to what I've said or done, let's have a conversation about it. Because at the end of the day, we all have a right to face our accusers. If they don't want to face me, then that should tell you something about them. So, with that being said, let's go into COINTELPRO. Putting that link in the chat. Big Hawk says the back chest must be slimy. Bruh, they are. They can be really slimy because if you know how Google Hangouts operate, the moment that you and I connect, I can look up your email account and then send a request to you, and then you and I can chat. And unless you invite somebody else in there, that conversation is only had between you and I. And that's what a lot of people have a tendency to do. They have their little groups, they have their little cliques, and then they create these narratives and there are sub-cliques and sub-cliques in these groups. And people are spreading rumors about one another, but no one is having enough courage to call people out and be like, wait a minute, you said that this person did this, but when you talk to them, you act like y'all cool. Why do you do that? So, yeah, be careful about those back chats. That's all I'm saying. So I just put the link in the chat about COINTELPRO through Wikipedia. I'm gonna scroll down and see if there are any sources, because I'm interested to see this. Oh yeah, there are lots of sources. There are over, wow. Whoa. There are over 119 sources. Well, there are 119 references, excuse me. And there are 1, 2, 3 sources. And then there are, what? Like 20 books for further reading. And then they got articles. And then they got FBI files. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's about 15 FBI files. Then they got government reports. So there's a lot that you can glean from this and do your research. So for those people that talk about us, what you call it, Google scholars or Wikipedia scholars, there are sources at the bottom of it. So you can call me what you want. So COINTELPRO. 1956 to 1971 was a series of covert and at times illegal projects conducted by the United States Federal Bureau of Investigations aimed at surveying, infiltrating, discrediting, and disrupting domestic political organizations' records. Domestic political organization, period. FBI records show that COINTELPRO resources targeted groups and individuals that the FBI deemed subversive, including feminist organizations, Communist Party, USA, anti-Vietnam War organizers, activists of the Civil Rights Movement or Black Panther Movement, e.g. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Nation of Islam, and the Black Panther Party, environmentalists and animal rights organizations, the American Indian Movement, independent movements such as Puerto Rico independence groups like the Young Lords, and a variety of organizations that were part of the broader New Left. The program also targeted the Ku Klux Klan in 1964. They even targeted the Klan? Wow. But that's just for 1 year, 1964. I guess for posterity's sake. So you can't say they were racist. According to Noam Chomsky, in another instance in San Diego, the FBI financed, armed, and controlled an extreme right-wing group of former members of the Minutemen anti-communist paramilitary organization, transforming it into a group called the Secret Army Organization that targeted groups, activists, and leaders involved in anti-war movement using both intimidation and violent acts. The FBI...
Can you start that again? Please, can you start that over? I want to make sure I heard what I just heard.
Okay. I have a tendency to read fast. Sorry. So, according to Noam Chomsky, yeah. In another instance in San Diego, the FBI financed, armed, and controlled an extreme right-wing group of former members of the Minutemen anti-communist paramilitary organization. Ooh, that's a mouthful. Transforming it into a group called the Secret Army Organization that targeted groups, activists, and leaders involved in anti-war movement using both intimidation and violent acts. Yes, armed and funded. It says the FBI has used covert operations against domestic political groups since its inception. However, covert operations under the official COINTELPRO label took place between 1956 and 1971. COINTELPRO tactics are still used to this day. COINTELPRO tactics are still used to this day. one more again. COINTELPRO tactics are still used to this day. And I've said that numerous times. And have been alleged to include discrediting targets through psychological warfare, smearing individuals and groups, using forged documents, and by planting false reports in the media, harassment, wrongful imprisonment, and illegal violence, including assassination. The FBI's stated motivation was protecting national security, preventing violence, and maintaining the existing social and political order. Beginning in 1969, leaders of the Black Panther Party were targeted by COINTELPRO and neutralized by being assassinated, imprisoned, publicly humiliated, or falsely charged with crimes. Some of the Black Panthers affected included Fred Hampton, Mark Clark, Zaid Shakur, Geronimo Pratt, Mumia Abdul-Jamal, and Marshall Conway. Common tactics used by COINTELPRO were perjury, witness harassment, witness intimidation, and withholding of evidence. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover issued directives governing COINTELPRO, ordering FBI agents to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of these movements and especially their leaders. Under Hoover, the agent in charge of COINTELPRO was William C. Sullivan. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy personally authorized some of the programs. Y'all catch that?
Yeah.
Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy personally authorized some of the programs. Although Kennedy only gave written approval for a limited wiretapping of Martin Luther King's phones on a trial basis for a month or so, Hoover extended the clearance so his men were unshackled to look for evidence in any areas of King's life they deemed worthy. In April 2018, the Atlanta Black Star categorized the FBI as still engaged in COINTELPRO behavior by surveilling the Black Lives Matter movement. Internal documents dated as late as 2017 show that the FBI has surveilled the movement. So now we understand why Robert F. Kennedy suppressed that information about Dr. Martin Luther King with what's her name? I can't think of her name. It'll come to me. He felt guilty because he gave the authority to temporarily wiretap his phones on a trial basis. So when they came back with a whole bunch of information about somebody white, renting him, getting rooms for him, and they had audio footage, yeah, I guess he was like, no, y'all can't use that. Yes, Diane Nash. Thank you, LJ. Thank you, Oak Cliff.
Thanks for that.
So even good old Robert F. Kennedy personally authorized some of the programs.
That's right. So a couple of the key takeaways from this is, one, that this is still going on. And regardless of what the media tells you, regardless of what people tell you, you know, about you being a conspiracy theorist, talking about it still happening, it's documented that it's still going on. First thing. Second thing is, look at how they don't seem to side with any kind of political wing or movement. You're seeing everybody from the Nation of Islam to the Ku Klux Klan being subject to this. Look at all of these groups that are listed here earlier in this article, and you're also seeing the type of tactics that they use: perjury, okay, witness harassment, intimidation, withholding of evidence, false news articles, okay, exposés from the media. Think about that: wrongful imprisonment, illegal violence.
That sounds like America.
Yeah, and it's still happening.
Yeah, you're gonna
Think about this. They just said that they hired a group. So how many of these racial situations were paid for? How many of these so-called KKK marches and protests where we got our people there and they happen to show up and violence pop off, how much of that is financed? think about it. They got on record that their policy is to hire, pay, and control groups to incite violence.
That's right. Just real quick, I want to take the audience back to about 2016, if I remember correctly. Ferguson. Okay. Mike Brown thing was still fresh in everybody's minds, and you started seeing the beginning of what became Black Lives Matter. Those protests that were happening out in the street. Now notice all day long those protests were peaceful. You saw well-meaning people from the community showing up, showing their support for the family, demanding justice from the local police, which is fair, right? Very peaceful, very civil disobedience. About 11:30 Eastern time or so about 10:30 local time. All of a sudden, some people with face masks, people hiding their faces with hoodies, Molotov cocktails, smoke bombs, wrenches, rocks, pipes, would show up, and they would get the party started with the police. Now, you didn't really see this on the evening news for the most part because of the time frame. But if you were paying attention to the 24-hour news, like CNN, for instance, this is an example. I'm not picking on them in particular, but they would cover this because the media happened to be around at this time at night, and these protests are still going on. So once the party got started with the police, you had a clash now. So the police are, A, trying to get people off the street since it's late, and B, trying to make sure that people's property doesn't get damaged or the individuals don't get injured. Okay, not saying that they're all well-meaning necessarily, but you get the protocol. So pay attention to that in the context of this, where you're seeing people that are paid, and this wasn't a new thing. This wasn't something that just started in 2016. This was something that was going on during the civil rights movement. Dr. King would have a protest or have a march somewhere, and all of a sudden, I don't know where, somebody would just show up throwing rocks, throwing Molotov cocktails at the police. Now, was this something that Dr. King and his people organized, or was this something else? Were people being paid to infiltrate and show up to these protests and have it out with the police, so that way the police could point to the protest, what otherwise was a peaceful, legal demonstration, and vilify it, illegitimize the movement, not just the protest, but the movement as a whole. So we got to consider that when we're reading this. And again, I remind the audience, this is still going on.
So let's look at this, where it reads about the history of COINTELPRO. Centralized operations under COINTELPRO officially began in August 1956 with a program designed to increase factionalism, cause disruption, and win defections inside the Communist Party USA, CPUSA. Tactics included anonymous phone calls, Internal Revenue Service audits, and creation of documents that would divide the American Communist Organization internally. An October 1956 memo from Hoover reclassified the FBI's ongoing surveillance of black leaders, including it within COINTELPRO, with the justification that the movement was infiltrated by communists. 1956, Hoover sent an open letter denouncing Dr. T.R.M. Howard, a civil rights leader, surgeon, and wealthy entrepreneur in Mississippi, who had criticized FBI inaction in solving recent murders of George W. Lee, Emmett Till, and other African Americans in the South. When the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, an African American civil rights organization, was founded in 1957, the FBI began to monitor and target the group almost immediately, focusing particularly on Bayard Rustin, Stanley Levison, and eventually Martin Luther King Jr. After the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, Hoover singled out King as the major target for COINTELPRO. Under pressure from Hoover to focus on King, Sullivan wrote, "In the light of King's powerful demagoguing speech, we must mark him now, if we do not do so before, as the most dangerous Negro the most dangerous Negro of the future in the nation from the standpoint of communism, the Negro and the national security." Soon after, the FBI was systematically bugging King's home and his hotel rooms, as they were now aware that King was going in stature daily as the most prominent leader of the civil rights movement. In the mid-60s, King began to publicly criticize the Bureau for giving insufficient attention to the use of terrorism by white supremacists. Hoover responded by publicly calling King the most notorious liar in the United States. In the 1991 memoir, Washington Post journal Carl Rowan asserted that the FBI sent at least one anonymous letter to King encouraging him to commit suicide. Historian Taylor Branch documents an anonymous November 21, 1964 suicide package sent by FBI that contained audio recordings which were obtained through tapping King's phone and placing bugs throughout various hotel rooms over the past 2 years. Was created 2 days after the announcement of King's impending Nobel Peace Prize. The tape, which was prepared by FBI audio technician John Matter, documented a series of King's sexual indiscretions combined with a letter telling him there's only one way out for you. You better take it before your filthy, abnormal, fraudulent self is bared to the nation. King was subsequently informed that the audio would be released to the media if he did not acquiesce and commit suicide prior to accepting his Nobel Peace Award. When King refused to satisfy their coercion tactics, FBI Associate Director Carter DeLoca commenced a media campaign offering the surveillance transcription to various news organizations, including Newsweek and Newsday. And even by 1969, as he'd been noted elsewhere, FBI efforts to expose Martin Luther King had not slackened, even though King had been dead for a year. The Bureau furnished ammunition to opponents that enabled attacks on King's memory and tried to block efforts to honor the slain leader. During the same period, the program also targeted Malcolm X, while an FBI spokesman has denied that FBI has directly involved in Malcolm's murder in 1965. It is documented that the Bureau worked to widen the rift between Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad through infiltration and the sparking of acrimonious debates with the organization, rumor mongering, and other tactics designed to foster intentional disputes, which ultimately led to Malcolm's assassination. I'm going to replay that. I'm going to repeat that because this is something that we hear or see in this community. During the same period, the program also targeted Malcolm X, while an FBI spokesman has denied that the FBI was directly involved in Malcolm's murder. In 1965, it is documented that the Bureau worked to widen the rift between Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad through infiltration, check, the sparking of acrimonious debates within the organization, check, rumor mongering, check, and other tactics designated to foster internal disputes, which ultimately led to Malcolm's assassination. The FBI heavily infiltrated Malcolm's organization of Afro-American Unity in the final months of his life. The Pulitzer Prize-winning biography of Malcolm X by Manny Marable asserts that most of the men who plotted Malcolm's assassination were never apprehended and that the full extent of the FBI's involvement in his death cannot be known. Pause.
I got a new favorite phrase.
Really?
Rumor mongering.
Really?
Rumor mongering. So fear mongering, but with rumors in place.
If that don't start unraveling some scripts.
I just wanted people to hear about that the rift that they caused between Malcolm and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. This is the same stuff that's going on in social media today. The same exact thing. Rumor mongering. And it goes unchecked. Because people are scared to open their mouth. Yeah, I said it. You're scared. I ain't scared. I like to get along with everybody. Stop it. Interesting, huh? So let's continue. Amidst the urban unrest of July through August 1967, the FBI began COINTELPRO Black Hate, which focused on King and the SCLC as well as the Student Nonviolent Coordination Committee SNCC, SNCC. Now, didn't we just do something on them yesterday? The Revolutionary Action Movement, RAM, and Deacons Up for Defense and Justice Congress of Radical Equality, CORE, and the Nation of Islam. Black Hate established a ghetto informant program and instructed 23 FBI officers to disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of black nationalist hate types organizations. So let me ask you this question. The 23 FBI officers, what do you think their nationality was? Their job was to disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of black nationalist hate type organizations. Now, I'm not saying people who do that are agents. I'm just saying they got agent tendencies. In March 1968, Memo stated that program's goal was to prevent the coalition of militant black nationalist groups, to prevent the rise of a messiah who could unify the militant black nationalist movement, to pinpoint potential troublemakers and neutralize them before they exercise their potential for violence against authorities, to prevent militant black nationalist groups and leaders from being respectable by discrediting them to both the responsible community and to liberals who have vestiges of sympathy, and to prevent the long-range growth of militant black organizations, especially among youth. Dr. King was said to have potential to be the messiah figure should he abandon nonviolence and integrationalism. And Stokely Carmichael was noted to have the necessary charisma to be a real threat in this way, as he was portrayed as someone who espoused a much more militant vision of black power. While the FBI was particularly concerned with leaders and organizers, they did not limit their scope to target to the heads of the organizations. Individuals such as writers were also listed among the targets of operations. The program coincided with a broader federal effort to prepare military responses for urban riots and began increased collaboration between the FBI, Central Intelligence Agency, National Security Agency, and Department of Defense. The CIA launched its own domestic espionage project in 1967 called Operation Chaos. A particular target was the Poor People's Campaign, a national effort organized by King and the SCLC to occupy Washington, D.C. The FBI monitored and disrupted the campaign on a national level while using targeted smear tactics locally to undermine support for the march. The Black Panther Party was another targeted organization wherein the FBI collaborated to destroy the party from inside out. Do I need to read any more of this? Just out of curiosity.
This is crazy.
For people to understand that these tactics that were used are still being used today, and not all the people that use these tactics are part of the FBI or even agents. They just use it to disrupt and distract so they can put their agenda and get their agenda done. So, just because somebody's using these tactics doesn't necessarily mean that they're part of an organization or bureau.
I'm on the point to knowing this info, you have to relook at history completely different.
Yeah, you have to.
It's like, man, 99% of it is all fabricated.
prefab.
Or sanitized and sugar coated to make you believe the narrative.
I mean, there's enough evidence to support that these things actually happen, especially with the United States being found guilty in the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. So, let's scroll down so we can look at some of the intended effects. And tell me if any of this stuff sounds familiar. You've seen this before. The intended effects of the FBI's COINTELPRO was to expose, disrupt, misdirect, or otherwise neutralize groups that the FBI officials believed were subversive, by instructing FBI field officers to create a negative public image for target groups by surveillancing activities and then releasing negative personal information to the public. We've seen that before, haven't we? Releasing negative public information or releasing pictures of people's families, their daughters, their kids, their wives. Breaking down internal organization by creating conflicts by having agents exacerbate racial tensions or send anonymous letters to try to create conflicts. Exacerbating racial tensions, being extremely and deliberately racial. But they never get in trouble for doing it. They never get banned. They never get any strikes. Create dissension between groups by spreading rumors that other groups were stealing money. Calling people con artists without proof. And no one's checking anybody on it. Restrict access to public resources by pressuring nonprofit organizations to cut off funding or material support. Restrict the ability to organize. Go ahead.
Now I was gonna say, what do we have here? Look at how this plays into some of the things we were talking about before with nonprofits. Cutting off access, making people think they can't get any of these of these provisions that they're entitled to.
Number 5, restrict the ability to organize protests. Number 6, restrict the ability of individuals to participate in group activities by character assassination, false arrest, or surveillance, or just restricting individuals' ability to participate in a chat group by blocking them, restricting them, cutting them off.
Move along, people. Nothing to see here.
So, chat, what y'all got to say about this? I mean, what are your thoughts? How are y'all viewing things now as far as infiltration on a micro scale and a macro scale? Do you believe it's still possible today? Do you believe that some of the YouTube personalities could be infiltrating or infiltrators or rumor mongers? I mean, do you believe that's possible? Do you think that's even possible? Or is that all that
think about it.
Conspiracy and conjecture with no plausible capability whatsoever? What do you think?
Because remember, a lot of these people are called influencers. Why are they called influencers? What are they there to do?
don't know. Jock and I don't keep falling for that banana in the tailpipe. I just want to get along with everybody. I'm cool with everybody. I don't know anybody that's cool with everybody.
Better leave them trendsetters alone.
And I'm not saying I know people that have a lot of enemies. I'm saying I don't know nobody that's cool with everybody. I've already been misquoted once. I don't want to get misquoted again. Oak Cliff says they know us better than we know ourselves. Well, yeah, because we keep falling for the same stuff over and over again. And there's little things you can do to protect yourself. We just don't do it because of fear. Fear of being left out. Fear of not being invited on a panel. Fear of somebody unsubscribing. Just straight up fear. My question is, how are you going to be scared of somebody you ain't never met? You don't even know their name. Oh, it just baffles me. I don't know. By a show of hands in the chat, throw up some ones in the chat. If someone has messaged you and said something negative about someone in a group chat that you've been a part of. I don't want names, I just want one because I want to test the theory. Throw up a one if someone has ever messaged you in a chat to tell you something negative about someone in the chat that you both are a part of. Throw up some ones. David Corey threw up some ones. I'm just curious. That's all. There's nothing coming after this. I know, great. I was just wondering because I know I've been privy to it. Had somebody message me in the back chat to tell me something negative about somebody, but they didn't want to confront that person. So that's called discrediting. If you want to know, developing mistrust. Oak Cliff said, never been down that alley. Good. At least you'll know what to look for if you see it. Oh. This infiltration ain't nothing to play with. It's not a game. It's not a game.
That's right.
Wow. Marlon P says, I've been blocked out of a chat though that I've been in for over a year. Oakland said I was warned during the Kaneka case to stay out of the back chats. I listen. That's good. mean, what are y'all thoughts on this COINTELPRO Memorandum 46? What does that? How does that make you view things? How does that make you view history? How does that make you view YouTube? I mean, how does it make you view any of this? It just makes me that much more suspicious, and that's going to make me question everything that much more. And you got to come with some proof. You just can't come with no words. You said W.E.B. Du Bois come to mind. Yeah, I get it. This is just crazy. So that information was provided by Wikipedia, COINTELPRO. Like I said, there were over 110 references in relation to COINTELPRO. 3 sources. There's also books, about 20. Then there's articles, about 7. Then there are FBI files. Everything from files on FBI's website to files on the espionage program, file on hoodwink, files on Puerto Rican groups, Cuban matters, New Left, Socialist Workers Party, Black extremist groups, files on white hate groups, files Las Vegas, Miami, Baltimore, Alexandria, Charlotte, and Indianapolis. Copy says aspiring actors that just happened to be around when crisis occurred. That's right. Leave no good crisis a chance. Or leave no good crisis alone. LJ says, in a day when you hear so much about solutions but see very little proof of any, this info is very enlightening. Indeed. Indeed.
Agreed. That's appreciated.
And I wanted to put something out or remind people that there are people that are doing stuff behind the scenes that you don't know about. So I don't want to make it seem like just because somebody's not saying it doesn't mean that they're not doing it. There's a lot of great works being done behind the scenes. But the stuff that's being done behind the scenes, they don't say they're doing stuff behind the scenes and then they'll tell you what it is. They just don't say anything, but they're doing the work because they're doing the work in the community. That's different that's different than saying you're doing works behind the scenes, but then you go on and say, well, we're not gonna tell you what it is because it's secret. If it's in the back chat, it's not secret. If you've had a phone conversation, it's not secret. If you send emails back and forth to your individual YouTube buddies, it's not secret. So please do us a favor and stop telling people what you're doing is a secret when the individuals you're supposed to be hiding information from has access to it, and the people that you're supposed to be helping don't. Just a thought.
Yeah, exactly. Think about everything you type and say on these platforms is you yelling it out in a crowded room of people. Even if you don't see anybody around, you got to operate, again, as if you have no friends and as if everybody can hear you. Because under the right circumstances, information can be distributed as such that everybody can see and hear what you do.
Just a friendly reminder that everything is archived and saved. Once it's out there, it's captured. And just because you deleted it doesn't mean it's deleted permanently. Don't believe me? Do your research on the Patriot Act. LJ Free says, just stop and start doing some real work. Are the next 7 generations not worth your genuine effort? Probably not. They're only looking out for themselves. And they have no intentions on helping the next 7 generations. It's a nice slogan. I hear a lot of people use it. The great thing about YouTube is, once I log off, y'all don't come with me. Y'all don't know what I do once I get out this computer, right? I can be doing anything.
Right.
I can be doing anything, everything, or nothing. You don't know. Unless you ask some of the subscribers that know me, then you'll know. So, something to think about. Beware the infiltrators. Beware the individuals that want to discredit people, but they don't disprove the information. That is a COINTELPRO tactic. Pay attention to that. So before we head out and let these good people in the chat and on the panel go out and make an impact in the community, Copper, is there anything that you want to say before we head out? Any last parting words of wisdom?
Well, I'd just like to reiterate that I always appreciate an opportunity to come here and speak to the community. I'm always looking for new ways to help out and help people connect with their families and help people get to a better place. That is the goal of not only myself, but all of A2. And I also want to reiterate that privacy, at least in internet world or internet space, is an illusion. None of this is private. So you have to operate in this space the same way you operate in the real world. Trust no one. Assume nothing. That sounds paranoid, but you'll be better off if you don't leave your well-being and your reputation up to others. I yield the mic.
Copper, we definitely appreciate you coming on and providing your valuable input. Grand Rising Indigenous 56 Ace. Forgive me for not speaking to you early if you want. It's always a pleasure. The interesting thing about it is that you and I have known each other for a while now. I've had the opportunity to have some good conversations with you. And even though our tribes fought at one particular time, I consider you a valued friend. And you're always welcome on this panel. And I look forward to you coming back and providing a lot more of that great information that you provide. So I want to thank you on behalf of A2. And I'm going to go on and see who else got something to add. I know that No Sellout had to step out for a little while, so I'm going to take a chance to see if he's available. If not, he hasn't gotten back yet. But I still want to give him a chance to say something if he has something to say. No Sellout, are you there? Okay. Then I'll go ahead and finish out before we let Bones close out. At the end of the day, it's all about worrying about the infiltrators. We will always destroy from within. We will never destroy from without. I can't say this enough. Just because people look like you and sound like you don't mean they are for you. Make them earn your trust. I don't care how many followers they have. I don't care what their title is. I don't care what they've done in their life. Make them earn your trust. If you're serious about what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish, everybody should earn your trust. And they shouldn't have a problem with being accountable. And if they are, I mean, you might want to take a look at who you're dealing with. Because if they can get to these leaders and keep them from being successful, meaning they, COINTELPRO, Memorandum 46, the agencies, what makes you think that you're safe from individuals that use these same tactics and they have a closer relationship to you? Stop trusting people on face value. And if someone does something that seems suspicious or sneaky, 9 times out of 10 it is. Question them on it. If they got an issue with you questioning them, then that should tell you something. Now, I'm not saying question them in public. Pull them to the side and be like, ask them what's going on or what they're doing. So, at the end of the day, make people earn your trust. Don't get caught up in the rumor mongers or people that like to always talk about people when they one-on-one, but won't say that same thing to their face. Because they instilling the same tactics as COINTELPRO. Because they mean no good for nobody. So again, like I said, Atlantis Assembly, we're here to help those that want to do their genealogy, help them to become financially independent, self-sufficient. If they choose to join the tribe, great. If they don't choose to join the tribe, great. We're not here to tell them that you got to. And I have not said, or nor will I ever say, that you have to join the tribe to become financially independent or to have economic freedom. I have not said, nor will I ever say, that you have to join one of the 573 recognized tribes. I will not say, or have I ever said, that you have to join any other over 1,000 local tribes. What I have said is, if we're going to paint the narrative that there are no tribes that are recognized, prove it. There are over 1,000 locally recognized tribes. Now, they didn't quote me saying that. And if you haven't talked to any of those tribes, or all of those tribes, how are you going to sit there and say that all of them are $5 Indians? Can you prove that they all $5 Indians? So again, I'm just asking questions. We're here to help. We're here to expose you to information and then provide you with the sources so that you can make your determining factor on whether the information is credible, helpful, or not. So with that, I relinquish the mic to Bones. Bones, give us some words of wisdom and then you can take us out, bro.
On that note, I'll start by this. This information that comes to the forefront, it does you or future generations no good if we don't apply it. If we don't take what we learned today and use it to better ourselves for tomorrow, we're just wasting each other's time. So let's make sure that we do better to make sure this doesn't happen to us again. Remember, question everything. You have a brain, you have a right to ask a question. Make sure you get clarity in return so you know what you're investing your time in. You know what you're putting your energy in. This time around, let's make sure we do not let the same old distractions of the past neglect us from our future. Let's make sure that as we come across this information, that we do our best to spread it for future generations don't fall to the same traps over and over again. So on that note, it's always fun when we get to kick it with the relatives. No place we'd rather be. And until the next Rising Show, everyone have a very, very blessed day and peace.
Peace, y'all.
Peace, everybody.
If you want to continue the discussion, you can join the Tontonist Assembly Community Forum. Put your thoughts on today's episode, the show, or post your own questions that you want answered. And I guarantee somebody will be there to answer it or continue the conversations on anything else you need information on. And again, that's at tontonissassembly.com under forum. I'll post the link in the chat.